right. Well, again, thank you for being here. We're going to just get started with a general conversation about followership. And my first question for us is, how can followership be defined in the context of Christian leadership to enhance human flourishing within organizations? So human flourishing being our overarching theme of the roundtables this year. But then what does that look like from a followership perspective? So anybody want to jump in and take a stab at that?
I wouldn't mind doing that. So I see 3 areas where followers are responsible for helping with human flourishing. That is in working with their peers, with the self, and also with leaders. And that's being good followers in all those different realms. So that looks a lot different when you're talking about yourself versus how you would treat your peers and help them be good followers, and also be a good follower yourself. And then with your leaders, of course, I think about courageous followership. I think about the times when you need to say something, it might be difficult, or just that you need to be able to support. So all those kinds of areas, when you think about it, take some time, probably pray about it if it's going to be really hard, and go ahead and do the harder thing. Then I think that promotes human flourishing as opposed to taking an easy route.
Yeah, I like that, Ellen. I think sometimes we neglect ourselves, especially as servant leaders. We put everybody else's needs first. And so keeping in mind that as a good follower, we need to take care of ourselves too. Nice. Dr. Turner, did you have something?
Yeah, I did want to chime in. You know, when we speak of Christian leadership, I think we have to keep at the center the Christian leader. Look to the model of Christ, right? And Jesus himself adopted what we often think of as a follower posture at times. Um, you know, the most quintessential piece of Christian leadership is watching Jesus's movements to the cross. And Paul talks about this in Philippians 2, and how Jesus chose to take the lowest place so that we might be lifted up. That's the language of Philippians 2. And so when we talk about followership in the context of Christian leadership, I think we really need to not just speak of servant leadership, but look at how Jesus embraced humility, so that followers could achieve more. A different way of saying the same thing is God could have done salvation without us. I mean, he could have. God could have done the gospel without us. But the point is, he didn't. The point is, God includes us. The point is, that our God works in a leadership system of leadership followers context consistently. And how does this lead to the flourishing of organizations? Well, the health of the church, the health of Christian organizations, truly depends on keeping Christ at the center, and that model of Christ taking the lowest place so others can be lifted up, I think, is just central to answering your question there.
I'd like to chime in on that, Dr. Turner. I think that I love the idea that Jesus submitted, or he lowered himself so that we could be elevated. But you also talked about how God didn't need us, but he chose to have followers. So that in itself elevates the position of follower. It says that followers are central to the success, to the development and success to organizations. And I like, there's the old adage, if nobody is following you, you're just taking a walk. So followers are central to, I think, organizational success. I also wanted to talk about Charlotte's description of courageous followers. And one of the key areas that stood out for me is the idea that followers have to speak up when ethics and moral ethical and moral issues arise, that they have to use the voice that God has given them to address it. I think that's important because in that way, followers become agents of change and leaders themselves. And I think in human flourishing, that's the development of the person, of the self. So those are my thoughts in that line.
Yeah, I'd like to add to what both of you said in terms of Jesus said in Matthew 4:19, when he started recruiting the disciples, he said, "Follow me." So in our professional or personal spheres of influence, we follow him. And in the research that Dr. Patterson and I collaborated on, we present a biblical perspective where servant is a foundation or can be a foundation of followership. So the heart of a servant, if you have a heart of a servant, you adopt a servanthood approach. So in that heart of a servant, which can be seen in Deuteronomy 10 and 12, where we have the heart of the servant, and we display it with a servanthood approach. In Philippians 2 and 5, it talks about that approach. And then we serve as unto the Lord. If we're serving as unto the Lord and not man, can we do that on a daily basis? Whether we're serving, our servant capacity is at work, at home, we could be walking, getting gas at our favorite gas station. Do we have that heart of service that people see through us? Do they see Jesus in us? And in every place that, are that we're seeing, that we're performing at work or whatever the case may be, because we're presented with so many different things in our lives. Our lives, especially today, there's chaos going on. There's things that we're presented with that, challenge our heart to serve us unto Lord. To do that and to do it on a regular basis, it's a difficult thing to do, but it's something that we need to keep in the forefront. If we keep that in the forefront of our consciousness, which is in itself difficult at times, because we walk in this flesh, I think that would be a blessing in terms of, Christian leadership to enhance human flourishing.
Yeah, I would add, by his very nature, he served even to the point of death on the cross. And so what a model. Servant leadership is so foreign, but servant followership, you'd think by your very nature, you are there to serve. But I think sometimes James McGregor Burns said that relationship needs to be a symbiotic, reciprocal relationship. And I found over my 37 years in the corporate world that my main role was to serve my boss, and that was getting to know my boss's needs, even flipping some of those words that we use for leaders, inspiring. Am I inspiring to my boss? Am I motivating? Am I influencing? Am I meeting her needs? Am I meeting the organization's needs and goals? And so, Jesus didn't say, take my leadership class, take my leadership development class. Like you said, Dr. Cruz, he said, come and follow me. And so I think every believer, to get to a point of flourishing for the sake of being a successful believer and letting our light shine, is just seeking the Lord to see, what does that mean? What is he calling me to do more of in serving? Because serving is not natural.
Fantastic. So I'm hearing
Remember,
a couple of things where we talk about the the chaotic world that we live in, and that Jesus said, "Follow me." And then also where he's basically that we've been chosen as followers of Christ. And so I think it's interesting with, again, going back to taking care of yourself. So like, how do we do that practically with, how do you remove some of those distractions so we're not as busy in our day so that we can focus more on Christ and truly follow him? And by following him, then we're presenting ourselves, worthy for others to follow and flourish. And it seems to be, are we just too busy today to do that?
That the start is we're Christians, so I think that we start our day with Christ. We start our day with prayer, with meditation, for preparing for the role that he has called us to. And I think that is one of the major things, or one of the major tools that we have in order to deal with the situations that will arise, because if you start with God, then you're going to be guided by God. And to me, that's essential in whatever assignment that you have, whether he's placed you in a position of leadership or whether you're in a place of followership. You need him to help you to do that job. The second thing I think you need to do is do your own SWOT analysis of what are your strengths and weaknesses that you have as you go into your day. What are going to be your opportunities for advancement, and what are the threats? What are the obstacles that you can see coming, and that obstacles that you can identify so that you can prepare for them? Those are things that we have been taught in our leadership program, that we not only can apply to organizations, but we can apply to self. My thought.
I want to jump in and echo what you just said, Jane. So many of my insights about these questions that you provided are so many of my insights include emotional intelligence and awareness of how I'm behaving in that situation as a follower, as a leader, depending on the context. And yeah, it's just so much self-awareness and emotional intelligence is involved in our discussion tonight.
Great point. Thanks for pointing that out. Yes. Anyone else? Ethan?
I think one of the things that I've learned recently is that
I can't hear you. It doesn't look like you're muted, but I can't hear you.
How about now?
Not yet. Not yet. While you work on that, I'm just going to repeat the question. So how can followership be defined in the context of Christian leadership to enhance human flourishing within organizations? I really like the idea of human flourishing and how that became our theme this year.
Yeah, Dr. Dean, you had added a nuance to the question that kind of related to busyness in our discipleship to Christ. I think it's important to note that Jesus was also very busy, and discipleship is not the art of removing busy. Discipleship is the art of following Jesus no matter what comes in the day. And so, I think there's just an important difference there when we're speaking of flourishing. Flourishing is not escaping the world. Flourishing is thriving on the vine, we might say, amidst the world.
I like that. Thriving on the vine. I like that. Ethan, any luck?
How about now?
Yes.
Yeah, good. Well, I apologize for being a little bit late. I'm in Honduras, and we're just dealing with that new hurricane coming right over the country. So my electricity is on and off. So if I go out automatically, that's because our power went out. But anyway, the question that you're asking, though, one of the things that I've felt like I've learned recently, the organization where I work now and where I'm leading now, for a long time I was one of the followers, and my role was to support a series of very good leaders that we had. but now I've switched and the roles flipped, and all of a sudden I'm in the leader role. And I found that a large part of what I can do to flourish myself or to help the people that are working in the organizations flourish is let them do their job. And that's been a lot of a part of it. And that's, as sometimes I feel a little strange having been in that follower role, and my role for a really long time was being the one that made sure the leader had everything they needed. And then I don't want to put more on them, on those leaders, but they feel that called to do their job well, and to be able to give them that chance to show what their skills are and what their abilities are, and to be able to allow them to flourish. And sometimes inadvertently, we might try to step in and say, well, I don't want to burden you more, so I'm going to try and do more. But really, then they almost feel, and on some conversations almost feel a little robbed of that chance, to flourish in what they're good at or what they feel like their skills are. That's been something to learn along the way, I guess.
Good point. Good point. And God's gifted each person with special talents and skills. So really recognizing that and then empowering each person to use those to flourish within their own, sphere, and then helping the organization as a whole to flourish. Great. Anybody else? Well, welcome, Bill and Dr. Brooks and Kim and Trent. Glad you guys can make it. All right, well, I'm going to move on to the second question. So what are effective ways for leaders to create a culture that recognizes and elevates the role of followers as crucial to the success of leadership efforts?
I have some insights.
Yes.
In my dissertation, I included the self-determination theory, and I am such a fan of the self-determination theory of motivation. And it states that we are all born with 3 innate psychological needs of autonomy, competence, and relatedness. And I really feel like that goes along with question number 2, that we need to create an environment that everybody can make the choices they want to make for their work. Autonomy is not being alone on an island, completely isolated. It's being able to choose, and then fostering that sense of competence and giving people training if they want it or need it or want to learn something new or different, and that relatedness, feeling community. And also in my study, I found I partially validated the Kelly Followership Questionnaire and found that there were 4 domains that the updated version measured. And so exemplary followers have the desire to solve problems willingly. They contribute their best effort. They foster collaboration with others, and they cultivate meaning. They find meaning in their work. So I just really feel like autonomy, competence, and relatedness go along with creating this culture to help recognize and elevate our followers, and we're all followers and leaders. It depends on the context. And I really like what someone just said, let followers do their job. Because if you're a micromanager, why did you hire them? If you're going to do everybody's job, everybody who reports to you, why did you hire these people? You're going to be burned out. You're not going to be flourishing. So we just need to have an environment of autonomy, competence, and relatedness.
I love that. Very good. Very good.
I would say, I guess I've learned most from the leaders who haven't been good servant leaders and haven't valued followers, just by watching them and determining what I'm going to do different. But I think, seeing this in reality in the corporate rat race is just publicly showing that you value your employees and your followers. And that's trust, it's respect. It's not rolling out a vision that's been done in PowerPoint in your office alone. It's developing a shared vision, a common vision where you ask for inputs. They have some skin in the game. You've asked them to weigh in on the goals for the year, for your annual plans, for your strategy. It's involving them. It's not just words and pizza lunches. It's really valuing their time, listening, and then other people seeing that, wow, he listened to me, and he stopped by my office to say hello and ask for input on one of his slides. And so I think those things go a long way, and followers talk. And so you don't have to do that with everyone, but just seeing the followers, seeing that you value them goes a long way.
Absolutely. Oh, go ahead,
I
Vanya.
really agree with that. And I also think having like a psychological safety, promoting that in the office is really important, or in any organization, allowing people to voice their concerns, having that autonomy and feeling competent, growing self-efficacy, things of that nature. Also being able to fail forward kind of thing, where it's not wrong to fail, is a great way for followers to really flourish in any organization.
That's great.
Dr. Irving, in our plenary session today, talked about healthy leadership. And one of the things he said healthy leaders do is allow people to become, or help people to become, who God created them to be. That just stuck in my mind because it definitely feeds into our leadership principles. I thought about how leaders who exercise individual consideration give their people a path to grow in just by interacting with them, learning who they are and what their skills are. And then they can mentor them, they can direct them, they can use tools like delegation to help them build their skills. Sherry Lynn talked about providing training opportunities. I think all of that feeds into a culture where followers feel like they are a part of the organization and helping it move forward, not just non-essential parts.
Mhm.
Sherry Lynn, when you were speaking about autonomy, competence, and relatedness as being critical. I wondered, in those studies, and I think you've looked at that quite a bit, in those studies, was there any differentiation on level of work, like from the janitor to the CEO? Was there any difference in how people value the autonomy, competence, and relatedness types of models?
Thank you for asking that, Ellen, and it's good to see you again. I did not necessarily study that, but I've been fascinated by some podcast stories and some news stories that I've read about people in lower level organizational positions finding incredible meaning. So I did not, that was not exactly part of my study. I just folded in self-determination theory as an opportunity to frame followership. But so I didn't study that exactly, but I love that. Well, in fact, and you know what? I have an article coming out next year in the Encyclopedia of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Spirituality. And I did bring up an article that I found about Undercover Boss. And it does kind of relate to your question and where you're headed with that about people finding meaning in their work. So yeah, I just now thought about that. I set out to find something about Undercover Boss, and I did find a journal article that included Undercover Boss. I was very pleased about that.
That's exciting. I don't. Oh, please go ahead.
Go ahead, Ellen.
Sorry. Yeah, I was trying to imagine if there could be a position where someone is not as interested in any kind of self-determination, and maybe in your higher power distance cultures, maybe that would be something that in a way would be more active. But I was thinking also about, I've worked in a few jobs where there are a few people who aren't trying to move up, and I didn't understand that at the time. I do more now, but not everybody wants to gain more responsibility and get the higher and higher and higher job. So if you don't desire to go up, does that change your desire for any of this kind of self-determination, and change also the character of your followership? I've been reading some articles lately, mostly just like popular articles, where there's a lot of Gen Z especially that is saying, I'm not interested in being the leader, but I'm going to be quite the good follower. That was the first time I'd really seen that kind of focus.
Yeah, can I chime in on that? I work in healthcare. And our C-suite executives, make an effort, a concerted effort to recognize their followers. They do this by, presenting thank you cards and gift cards for employees of the month. They give their own recognized and identified parking space. They do this through employee recognitions. We've got a lot of different disciplines, in healthcare and community healthcare. And, for instance, we'll give out a $250 gift card to our providers. We'll give a $50 gift card to some of our medical assistants. There's variations in gift cards that are given out. And we also, at our annual Christmas party, give awards to what we call True Champions. The name of our organization is True Health. So we recognize and do this is an internal selection that is done by your peers, regardless of the level of peer, and we have different levels of true champions. So we got a provider true champion, we have an administrator true champion, and we even have, people that can be selected as true champions that are people who are janitors, people who are those followers that do not want to do anything but following. And they're happy at staying at that level, And the other thing I wanted to add was that, the expressing verbally, the trust that you have in the people that you're following, and that verbal communication that you have with your supervisor at whatever level that you're working at, and when they express that they trust you, that they are empowering you to do your job. We all get a job description, right? And in that job description, it delegates power to us. So we are delegated power through that job description. We inherit power just from the seat and just from sitting in that position. You get influence from that job description, and you have different levels of power. This is something that Dr. Patterson and I have researched about. But that is impactful to helping an organization, realize its mission and visions. And if you repeatedly, I know in our organization, what we do, we have a management meeting once a month. And in that management meeting, what our CEO does, and this could be a management meeting or quarterly management meeting where we have different numbers of people attending these meetings, she literally has us repeating and verbalizing the vision and the mission of the organization. And we do this every month, just about at every meeting. And what it does, it brings that mission and vision and becomes implanted into your spirit, to where you understand why you're there at this particular organization. So I think those things that, our senior executives do are, servant leadership and capacity, and really influences how 345 people in an organization go about their day at work. Now, I'm not saying that all of us do that, because you have bad apples that spoil the whole bunch. So you're going to come across that, and you address it accordingly. So anyway, I just thought I'd throw that in there.
That's great. I think so my experience in corporate, I worked in corporate 25 years. And as I worked on my dissertation, actually, I was tasked with how do we improve employee engagement in the organization? So one of the hardest things that I had to do in my whole 25 years was take the vision and mission statement of the organization and backward engineer it so that employees at every level of the organization could answer the question, what do you do? Because when somebody says, oh, I work at such and such, they say, oh, what do you do there? A lot of people can't answer that question in a very short, elevator speech. And they don't understand how that job that they do ties back to the overall mission of the organization. So trying to reverse engineer that so that employees did understand that their job was meaningful and valuable and important. Therefore, they were important and meaningful and valued. So once we could figure that out, and it took a long time to do that, and then also working with the dissertation where we worked on a sense of community, meaningful work, altruistic love, those different components, managing the culture to have that, we were able to shift employee engagement scores with the company to some of the highest in that firm, which was pretty amazing to see it in practice like that. But the management piece, Dr. Cruz, like you were saying, you guys are managing the culture, which we know from Edgar Schein and a lot of others, they say, if you're not managing the culture, it can implode real quickly. So managing the culture in those staff meetings to have people repeating what the mission and vision is, just so people know it is at the forefront. I think that's so important.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
Those lines, I recently read that when President Kennedy was visiting NASA, he saw a guy who was sweeping the sidewalks. They were full of autumn leaves. Wouldn't think there'd be a lot of that in Houston, but he asked, "Hey, what are you doing there?" And the guy said, "I'm helping put a man on the moon." Like that is a culture that did a great job of describing why you're at a place.
That's awesome. Wow. And look at the pride he would have in that. That would be amazing. Anybody else? Great conversation. Yeah, managing the culture, we know from our research, it's one of the most important things that we can do. So even as a follower, are there things that we can do as a follower if we notice the culture isn't being managed? And I've noticed this in my own workplaces where maybe it's not being managed at the organizational level, but can you manage it at your division level or your team level? Any insight into that?
Yeah, I'll chime in. Vanya mentioned earlier the importance of psychological safety, and I definitely agree. Of course, my presentation for this conference was all about how the literature in psychological safety is leader-centric, leader-driven, leader-focused. The absence of a follower centric, a follower word, what followers can do is pretty stark in psychological safety literature. And with this growing agreement that leadership is a system, that leadership is leaders, followers, context, like Kellerman speaks to. Um, I find that we definitely need more literature from the follower perspective on what followers can do to create this culture. In fact, if we ask the culture question, um, I think those little prizes, the little employee of the month, little celebrations, those are great coming from leaders. But when we ask the culture question, we have to get to the values. We have to get to the beliefs. It's one thing to mandate certain pieces, but if the culture doesn't have it, then those employee of the month is just a little trinket. It's meaningless. It only has meaning if we value what's behind it. I love the NASA example, putting a man on the moon. Well, there's meaning, there's value there. And when we speak to psychological safety, you know, I don't have the answers. That's part of my presentation. We need to find the answers. But once we do discover what are the behaviors that followers can engage in to promote something like psychological safety, we need to train to that in our leadership